Got my 2020 Yamaha Wolverine X4. I'm going to throw a winch on it today. It does have the Yamaha factory aftermarket brush guard or whatever installed on it. So we picked up a winch mount from KFI, this guy here. And then we also picked up the KFI Assault 5,000 pound wide spool synthetic rope winch, and then everything that comes with the kit. I made another video that talks about, it's just an overview of everything that comes with the winch. That video I'll post in the description below, and you can take a look if you just want to see the winch itself. But this is going to be an install specific to the Yamaha Wolverine X4. This is a 2020, so I'll just dive right in and start getting everything figured out. Take the hood off, figure out where I want to put the solenoid, and then start looking at the directions and figure out where the mount's going to go. So let's dive in and see if we can get this thing installed. Okay, first things first, I got this cover off, got the hood off. You got your speed management system, just pull that plug off. You've got this line and this line, or these two lines that go around there. You got 5 screws across the top, 4 across the bottom. So we'll pull this off, set it out of the way. The reason I'm doing this is I think I want to mount the solenoid somewhere up underneath here. Maybe somewhere in here is a good spot. I'll look for somewhere metal to mount it. I may make my own bracket or something. We'll see. I don't want to screw it into the glove box or anything. But I just wanted to get eyes on here and then also get access to some accessory ports. Now it looks like there's already a quick connect, fairly heavy red wire. Don't know what that's for. And then a quick connect here. I don't know if that's for a switch. And then you've got your 5 accessories that everybody knows about, which these are for your power on, your ACC, and I actually bought somewhere here. This is from Corsa Technic, and that is a whole set of connectors. I've got male and female, and I've also got different size rubber seals. There's some there, the black ones and the green ones are for different size wires. So I picked those up off of Corsa Technic. I may not use them for this winch install, but definitely for light bars and everything else. And just a quick tip, I zip tied this key on here so that this can't ever fall out and get lost. So anyway, I'm gonna take a look and see where we want to mount some stuff, but I just wanted to get that firewall off, and it looks like that might be a good spot there. So let's see what we can come up with. Okay, the next thing is we got the plastic cover off the front. We set the winch mount in there. Let me make this where you can see it a little better. There we go. We got to install the hardware. There's a backer plate that goes in here with some bolts, and then bolts down here, and then we'll place the winch. So let's start doing that. Okay, I got the winch mount sitting in place. Got the bracket there, and I've got the winch actually sitting in place. Now this is the Assault Series wide. Let me get a flashlight so you can see this here. Now you can see there's holes existing. You might not be able to see that, maybe it's too washed out. But there's some holes existing right here. Just a second. So I got the winch mount set in place. We got my bolts there for the winch mount. Then it says you may or may not need to remove your stock bumper if you can't get the winch in there. So I was able to slide the winch in place, but because this is the Assault Series wide spool winch, if you look, if you can see that, there's some holes. Let me see if I can point the camera down there. There's some holes right there that are for the standard winch, and they line up with the bumper holes, the stock holes in the bumper. but because this is a wide spool, there's 2 other holes which line up in the back, but I have to drill 2 holes in the bumper. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to pull this back out, pull the bumper off, drill a couple holes, and then put it all back together. So I'm gonna do that real quick and then put this mount back in there. Well, I was feeling a little lazy. I didn't want to take the bumper off, but I needed to drill these holes out so you can see it a little better now. That hole there, this is the standard width, and this is for the wider one. So I had to drill that hole, and these ones line up. So you can see, let's go over the top here. There we go. You can see there's a stock hole, there's the new drilled hole. It's all wet because I just painted it. I'm not a fan of my stuff rusting out, so I just painted it up. What I ended up doing is I just measured the holes. I marked them with the plate in place, got it as square as I could. Then I just came underneath and I just drilled them from underneath. Wasn't too bad. It's 7/8 of an inch difference center to center of hole. So drilled those out and got them painted up. I'll let that dry for a minute while I play with the wiring some more. Then once it's dry, I'll get this plate mounted in there. So let's see if we can find a location for this solenoid. Well, we got the solenoid set up here in the firewall. I looked at some routing of wires and a good location, kind of keep it out of the dirt and everything else. So I poked a hole right there and one back here. This goes into the glove box, but I have a solution for that. I've got these rubber washers and hardware that'll bolt up through the bottom, and it'll rubber washer and weather seal it from getting inside. So actually right here through this gap in the frame is where the wires can come up. They'll go underneath, wrap back around. And if I follow this down, they'll come out right here in the frame, right there. Let me make this where you can see it here. There we go. That's where the solenoid is right there. So they'll come through this frame member. There's a hole right here above the shock mount. It'll come out and go on that side of the light, come down this shroud, and be down here. So you won't have any wires hanging out in here. They'll basically come up from right here, go up underneath, and follow up, and they'll be hidden up inside of this frame member, keep them from getting smashed and damaged, and the wires will be up there. Then on this side, the wires will come out the firewall right here. So there's a little corner right here that I can get out of. There we go, you should be able to see better. There'll be a little corner right here that I'll be able to get out of. And you'll just have a couple wires going to the battery and stuff, and the switch wires will go down that way. So we should be in pretty good shape. So I got that ready to roll. I'll get it mounted, and the paint should be dry on this bracket, and we'll get that installed and we'll start routing some wiring. Just a quick note, the stock hardware was not long enough to go up through the firewall with this rubber washer to weather seal it. So I just grabbed some 1/4 inch, 1/4 by 20. 1/4 by 20 doesn't fit in this because it's metric. So I don't know if you can see that. I just took a quick drill bit and just chased it through there. You don't really have to drill it out. You're just kind of cleaning out where this thing was cast. So got some new hardware, a little bit longer, and we'll go get this thing installed right there and right there, and then that part will be done. Okay, I got everything back together here. Got the winch bolted in. Everything's just loose, so it's kind of wiggling around, with the exception of the fair lead. Something to note on the fair lead, I would install this outside so that you can get to the bolts easy, because trying to get a wrench in there doesn't work very well. And the bolts that come in the hardware, it's a bolt with a nylock, and then also these washers, lock washers. If you use the lock washer, the bolt isn't long enough to also go through the nylock, which I think is strange. So I'm not using the lock washer. So the bolt goes through the nylock, has about 2 threads sticking out, which is what you're supposed to do. So I got that bolted up, and this is just sitting here. I'm gonna start running wiring and everything else before I tighten anything down, just to make sure that everything's going to fit. I don't have to take anything back out or there's any sort of issues. I'll start routing the wiring, and I've got this same thing. It's just loose in there, but that's where it's going to sit. And let's start running some wiring and seeing what we can come up with. Just as a note, these instructions that came with the mounting, let's get it, there we go. The instructions that came with the mount, Yamaha Wolverine specific, it talks about, you know, if you got to take the bumper off, drilling your holes, using existing holes, etc., etc. And then it also has Wolverine wiring information, and it's got different things you can do here. It talks about locating where the battery is. This isn't actually how the new Wolverines are. This is not an X4. This is an old Wolverine. So some of this doesn't make a ton of sense, and it's got a connector that is non-specific. So I'm disregarding that completely, and I'll look in the book for the KFI winch, but it should be pretty self-explanatory. If you look at it, it talks about you know, the cutouts for your switch, and then it's got diagrams of what goes where. So other than this, I probably won't use a whole lot of the book, but let's get started and see what we come up with. Okay, got the remote switch set up in there in the stock location that comes in these things. So you can see I bolted it in. Now there's actually a couple holes. You can see one right there, and there's one down below. That's where it normally wants you to mount. On the back side, that is so you can thread something in there. I didn't like that, so I just drilled a hole through and used the hardware that came with it. And then there is the remote. Turn this up a little bit here. There we go. So now you can see the remote. Stuff's right in there. Close this, and then whenever you need it, you pull the remote out, plug in your remote. I got a lot of wire here, so I'm probably not going to use all of that, but it's a good start. So back in there is where we're at. I'll probably cut some of these wires off, and then we'll move on to the next thing. So we got that pre-ran. I'm going to run the switch next, and then figure out what to do with all the wires. Okay, so I've got a few things done here. Got the blue and yellow wires for the winch tied in. They sneak up underneath here, go above this bracket, and they pop out over here. It's kind of hard to see. So they come from this back side of this bracket on the back side of the light mount, and you can see the zip tie right here. Let me see if I can focus here. There we go. You can see two black wires. They're tucked up tight, and they're zip tied here. They go into this frame member along the inside of that frame member right there. They follow up inside the frame member, and they pop out right where you can see that light right up there through the frame member. So they're completely protected. They've got a little bit of a service loop down at the bottom to where nothing's tight or sitting against the winch itself, but nice and protected. And then I'll show you here. They pop out right there. Then I made a service loop. The loop is back here, and it's zip tied right here to the frame member, so it's self-supported. And then they come back around, so it's just a small loop, comes back around. And I actually can put this guy on there now. There we go. Kind of disappointing, the yellow one came off and dropped down in the frame somewhere, so I can't find it. So now all I've got are red and black that are going to come through here and connect to the battery. So that's about done. Then I've got my wires hanging here. This whole loop of wires. One comes off of this switch for the remote, or I shouldn't say switch, but this plug for the remote. And that's this one here, and it needs to get wired in. And then this one runs down and is zip tied here, and has a service loop for the switch side, so that if I ever have to take it out. So let's climb in here. And there's the rocker switch. You can see there. So got the rocker switch installed. The wires loosely ran. I've got the wires loosely ran for the remote, and then I just got a couple power cables. I'll show you. If you look right in there, you can kind of see the wire, and it follows up the frame member there. You can see it follows up the side of the frame member and goes up, and right there you can see it going across. So it's fully protected, zip tied, so there's nothing hanging down and out of the way, so that's nice. As I started looking around, I noticed a couple things. One, I've got this red wire with a white stripe that's been sealed and is fairly large size wire. I wonder if that was for the factory winch or the Wolverine worn winch setup that they have, the VRX or whatever. I don't actually know what that's for. And then there's a multi-connector plug here with just a cap on it that I don't know what that's for either. And then you've got your 5 ACC plugs. I got the information for these off of the Wolverine forum, and unfortunately the part number that I was given was wrong. So these, if you look at the end, you can see that they're just round with one little clip. But if you look at these, they're round, but they've also got these little tabs right there. If it'll focus. There's little tabs. So there was 2 styles. I should have double checked before I ordered, but I went off of what the guy said to order, so none of these are right. So I may not even be able to finish today, unless I can figure out if this was intended for powering the winch as an ACC. I can turn and tie into that. There's a few things. I mean, there's another one of these connectors here. There's a spare here. There's an extra connector here for 4-wire connector. This one is a 4-wire as well. This is a 4-wire. So some of these I don't even know what their intent was. But long story short, I think I'm gonna have to tie into one of these, and I don't have the right connector. So what I may do is get all the wires ran, get everything done, and just leave a little bit of a loop right here. So next is get the 2 red and black wires, these guys here, get them connected over from the solenoid to the battery, and then take care of this mess of wires here, and then we should be good to go. Tighten everything down on the winch, but it's starting to look pretty good. It's hard to see, which is good. That's kind of what I wanted. I wanted it black and to kind of blend right in with the machine. And I really like the connectors and everything that this winch came with. They're clean, they look pretty good. You don't see a bunch of different colors and everything, which is nice. And then over here, it's really easy to get to the engage and release switch. You can actually hear it pretty well now that I've turned it a few times. So I really like that. Be easy to get to when I need to use it. And I didn't want a bunch of wires just hanging out here. My goal was to clean everything up to where you almost don't see it. Same thing when I run more accessories. I'm going to try and hide all the wires back underneath the firewall. It just looks clean. You don't have to worry about water as much being under the firewall. So there's that. This guy's still loose like I was showing you earlier, and let me show you why. Because I've got these rubber washers and lock washers here. Once I get everything done, I'll suck those up, and it should make the glove box watertight again, so I don't get any moisture from outside. So let's get the rest of these wires figured out. Try and figure out what the heck the deal is with this guy, and I can use a bolt connector or whatever there, And then these guys, unfortunately, have the wrong style. It takes about 3 days to ship them, so see if I can return those. But I'll finish everything else up and we'll check back in. Okay, so I was curious. I got my voltmeter set up and I just poked a little hole. It'll focus here. Just poked a little hole in there, put it on there, checked it to the battery, negative, 0. Turn the key on, come over and check it again. So it's on there, volt to the battery, 12 volts. So that's a key on accessory power source. I think it was intended for something specific. I'm hoping it was for the winch because that's what I'm going to use it for. Mainly because I don't have the right connectors. So I'm going to use that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this thing wired up and we should be about done. Alright, so I tested that plug. It was 12 volt, so here it is. I actually cut the connector off, put a butt connector, ran both of my wires, see if it'll focus. Both my wires, one is for the remote and one is for the power on for the switch. So both those wires go into here. That's my on-off power source, switched power source. I've got these cables roughly ran, coiled up. I'm gonna just keep the extra cable for now. I don't want to cut it because if I ever move it or do anything, and then I have it just out of the way right now. So everything is connected. I've got this guy connected. The last thing I'm doing is I actually had to drill out the terminal post, whatever you call this deal. Okay, so I've got my two red wires coming off of, one is the remote and one is the switch for your ACC power on. I did end up using that connector that was already there in place. I just use a butt splice connector and some shrink wrap, and then I kept the extra wires zip tied back here out of the way. I've got all this connected. It was really easy, plug and play, color coordinated, already pre-split and everything. I'm going to keep my extra wire coiled up and it'll actually fit right there in kind of a pocket once I test everything. And the last thing is I'm hooking up my leads. I'm going to go ahead and include a battery tender set up when I plug this all in, so I can just hook my battery tender up in the winter. But I had to drill this connector out to go through the bolt that came with the battery, so that would fit. Right now it didn't fit, so both of the leads that come in this kit, you can see there, it's a smaller hole, it'll have to be drilled out. So I just held it with a pair of needle nose and drilled it out. And these cables are about the right length. When I get everything connected, there'll just be a little loop inside of here. So that's the last thing I got to do, is connect those two leads and my battery tender, and then I'm going to test everything, and if everything works out, then I'll tighten up all the bolts for the winch, hide all the wires, put everything back together, and we'll be done. Okay, I had to close the garage door. Neighbor's mowing his lawn, so you won't be able to hear me very well. But got everything wired up, got everything tipped in, got the positive side to the battery. It doesn't look amazing. They got this kind of chintzy cover that goes on there. So I may clean that up a little bit. We got the battery tender on there. We got the negative side. Again, these are just sitting here for testing purposes. Got everything else hooked up. So we should be able to power everything up and get something going here. So power on, backlit switch, which looks really good. You should be able to see it. We'll try it. I can hear it doing something. Is this engaged? It is engaged. So it is going in and out. Let's try the remote switch here. Give me just a second. Let me grab the remote, get it plugged in. remote connected inside the glove box. That seems to be working. Does this still work with the remote in? Yep. So everything seems to be functioning just right. Let's free spool it. Okay. Obviously I'm gonna have to re-spool this because you want to put tension on it. But let's run it in here. So I got the remote control, and let's try it. I think I still have it in free spool. There. Okay, let's try it here. There it goes. Now I should not have power to everything when power is off on the switch. So let's see here. That's off. No power there. And the remote should be the same scenario. There it is. So everything works just fine. I'll put it all back together. Once I get these cables kind of cleaned up a little bit, this group will sit right down in here, but I want to tighten everything up, put the firewall back on, and then from underneath, you probably can't see that, where that light's coming from. You can barely see any cable or anything. Should keep it fairly well protected. I may even add a blink off piece of plastic or something. So that's it. The only thing left to do is clean it up and then put the hook and fairlead bumper on. And that's this guy here. It's a rubber bumper, and then you've got this little leash and then the hook, and that is it. I'll probably go through and try and do something a little bit better right here. I just don't like the way they do some of the factory wiring with these little deals. I wish it would all lay flat and look cleaner. There shouldn't be anything else really going to the battery after this. Everything's going to go off of a relay box that I'll probably put in. Not entirely sure where to put that, but if I start adding a bunch of accessories, I'll probably put a relay light in there. So that's it. I think it looks pretty good. Looks pretty mean. And 5,000 pounds, it should definitely pull me out of a rut or anything else, right out of the mud. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. If you like stuff like this, go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. I don't know that I'll post all the time, but when I do, it will be content similar to this. So hopefully this helps. Bye. Okay, other than putting a skid plate on and buttoning up the firewall, we're 100% done. So just wanted to show you a couple things on how I did it. The firewall is sitting in place. It's not buttoned down. I cut a little hole and a slot for my wires to go up and into the firewall. So you really only have these two black wires come out for your negative and positive. And then I added this quick connect for a battery tender for in the winter time, and then I guess in the summertime I'll just tuck it up underneath like that. So it still looks pretty clean. I got to button this back up, and I'm going to show you real quick. Just pull this out here. This is what the install looks like. So I've got a coil of wire there. I've got my solenoid up underneath here. It's pretty well buttoned up in there. I like the way that came out. It's easy to get to if you need to, but nice and clean install. And then over here, my two power wires, like I showed you earlier. So that's basically it. Here's the winch. Overall, let me move this out of the way. So can't hardly see it, which again I like the way this looks. Looks like it's supposed to be there. It's kind of funny they use all black hardware on the entire thing except for your little rubber bump stop, so that's kind of funny. I'm not going to take the time to paint it, but you can kind of see. Let me see if I can focus here. There you go. You can see that yellow ended wire comes up, goes up and around. So basically there's not really any wires that you can see or that can get damaged. They're pretty well tucked up underneath. This is the only one that I would worry about. You know, if I were to make a gripe, it would be that thing being there. I wish it came out the back so that any rocks or brush or debris could hit that and break that post off. Here's a front view. It is pretty well protected. Pretty well protected by the bumper, but even a little wing or something off of here probably would have helped. I'm not too worried about it, but if I made a gripe, maybe even in this casting you have two wings that came down to protect that. Other than that, that's about it. Got this rubber guy on there. I didn't get it super tight. It says to pull it tight. Once you get it tight, you're there. You get your little lead. I don't like these things. I'm probably going to take it off, but for the sake of the video and any of you guys that do want to run it, show you that. I talked about it in the review of this, or kind of the initial look at this winch. Most people do not run a synthetic rope with a roller fair lead. When I say most people, I mean people and companies. But this is a hard plastic, almost like a Delrin or a UHMW, and it's specifically designed for running this style rope, synthetic rope. So I had a couple people ask me about that, but this was designed, it came with the kit, and I really like it. So I'll show you a couple things. One thing I really like about this specific mount is it's not just a bend right here, it actually comes back and is welded underneath here, so it's got a lot of structure to it. I like that the winch is not threaded because it's an aluminum housing, but they use cage nuts, a square nut inside of the aluminum, so you actually have steel that you're bolting into the bottom of the winch. I think that's a very good touch, and not only does it help with alignment, but it bolts it real good, and you don't have to worry about tearing threads out of aluminum. And then I really like the back end of this bracket. It's all bent in out of one piece, and it bolts through the frame with a big backing plate and a heavy duty bolt, whereas the stock one is supposed to bolt in right in there somewhere. And I'm not a big fan of the stock one. The KFI winch mount, I think, in my opinion, is superior to a couple of the others that I've seen. I like it. I think they did a really good job. Everything that I've seen with this KFI stuff, the switch feels really good. The wiring was really nice. The black wiring, all the connectors, the solenoid, the fact that it doesn't have just some cheap chintzy bracket on it. It's you know, part of it. It's cast into it, and I'll show you that. So you can see your bolt holes are actually cast into it, where some of them just have a cheap little bracket. I really think that the KFI winch is going to be a very solid, well-built winch and last a long time. A real quick install note I want to show you. You do, for the wide version, like we talked about, you will have to drill those two holes. I was able to drill them from underneath. Let me see if I can show you here. Let me pause it and turn it to manual so I can get some sunshine on this thing. So here's the bottom. That's the hole that I drilled on this side and one on this side. You can see that this little cutout was intended from Yamaha to go in through there, and the bolts, the bracket has the holes for that, but that's for the non-wide spooled winch. So you have to drill your own, and then you just gotta fish the bolt up through before you bolt everything. It's not that bad, really not that difficult. You got the bolt back here for the back of the winch. Other than that, it was pretty simple. I went ahead and painted everything because I don't want any rust, and then I just got to go through and put my skid plate back on. So that was really the only main modification. And then hardware wise, this just happened to be a bolt that I had. Just drilled that out so that it would fit a 1/4 20. And then on the inside, there's my remote. Then on the inside you can see those two 1/4 20 with the large fender washer. There's actually a rubber seal on those, keep the weather out. And so I was playing around with this and close that up, and then stows in there. So that's basically it. I'll put the firewall back on and everything is done, and then this thing will be ready to hit the hills and try it out. If you have any questions, let me know.